Hi there, my name is Melissa Laco. I am a board certified behavior analyst working at Julie Billiart School in their Akron campus. You may know me from JB in Akron. Could be a JB parent from Akron or Lyndhurst looking for strategies to use during distance learning. Or if you've just stumbled upon me, hi, welcome. You may remember I did a longer webinar on independence and motivation, especially during distance learning. And now I'm making some shorter videos on a variety of topics to help with distance learning, creating a little bit of a library, if you will. So today's video is about rewarding your child without using or resorting to bribery. So I'm going to go into a brief overview of reinforcement and some strategies to use for distance learning. I'm going to also talk a little bit about things that teachers at JBA have used in their classrooms and one system in particular that you can easily adapt for home. So let's get started. So a little reinforcement 101. This is something that we hear about all the time. So it is the relationship between a specific behavior and its consequence. And it leads to a future increase in the probability of said behavior occurring. The one thing to note that is important is that hopefully reinforcement, or the goal of reinforcement, is to create a lasting change over time and not just in the moment. So in other words, reinforcement does refer to increasing a behavior. So if you think about it, typically when a behavior is followed by something that's valued, behavior is more than likely to be repeated. And reinforcement as a consequence, it's something that happens after behavior occurs. So real life reinforcement, we do contact it every day, whether we know it or not. So a lot of our behaviors are shaped by reinforcement. So it is definitely more than doing something, just receive a reward, excuse me. Every behavior that you've learned has been shaped through a long stream of reinforcement contingencies. Academics, conversational, social, fine and gross motor skills, and sometimes our internal thoughts have also been shaped by reinforcement. So a real life example, coming to work and getting a paycheck. So getting paid for working will most likely keep you coming back, right? Another real life example is flipping a light switch. So if you're wanting to turn on and off the lights and flipping the switch causes that to happen consistently, assuming the light bulb isn't burned out, right? You will most likely continue to use the light switch. It can be something as super exciting as getting a paycheck or just that everyday life example. So the formal definition of both positive and negative reinforcement. Positive reinforcement is when a behavior is followed immediately by the presentation of a stimulus, and as a result, the future frequency of the behavior increases. So in other words, adding something desirable, the behavior is more likely to occur in the future. So an example, a teacher gives Jenny a Skittle every time she independently raises her hand during a lesson. Jenny now raises her hand instead of calling on in class. And negative reinforcement is when a behavior is followed immediately by the withdrawal or termination of a stimulus, and the future frequency of that behavior increases. So basically, you're taking away something that's unpleasant, and whatever that behavior is, it's more likely to occur in the future. Sometimes negative reinforcement is, people think it's synonymous with punishment, but it is not at all. So it'll make a little more sense when I give you this example. So Carl hates the beeping noise his car makes when he doesn't use or wear his seatbelt. We get that every day. So Carl now puts on his seatbelt immediately to avoid that terrible sound. So, which is something we do a lot in real life. So negative reinforcement is definitely not a punishment procedure whatsoever. So positive reinforcement versus bribery. Sometimes people do say, well, okay, well, you're positively reinforcing this kid, you must just be bribing them. No, not at all. So the big difference, reinforcement is something that is earned as an incentive that is doing what you're supposed to be doing, engaging in a positive behavior to obtain said reward. It creates a lasting positive change. So hopefully the positive reinforcement will increase the likelihood of said desired behavior in the future. It is pre-planned and also delivered with praise, and the adult is in control. Whereas bribery, something is typically given when responding to a challenging behavior. It's very much in the moment. So it changes the behavior in the moment, but it's usually reactive versus that pre-planned. And typically it's given most when you're frustrated or really desperate to get something done. And instead of the adult being in control, the child is in control, and that opens the door to negotiation. Whereas with reinforcement, this positive reinforcement, the adult is in charge. There is a behavior that you've chosen to reinforce. So the types of reinforcement that are used in the classroom, a lot of very simple things. So behavior specific praise, which I'll talk a little bit about. Physical, high fives, hugs, tickles, anything like that. Access to tangibles like toys or an iPad or something like that. Edibles, so snacks, or a certain person like a preferred staff member, or also in JBA's case, Sydney, our therapy dog. A lot of kids like to work for a visit with Sydney. And then there are 3 different systems that they use sometimes. One is a token economy. So there's the basic system using token boards, and I know that some of the teachers have suggested using those. And then there's some more advanced systems, not going to go into that because those would be very hard to implement at home. Behavior contracts and group contingencies. So behavior contract might be a little tough to come up with at home, and with a group contingency, can't do that because you obviously don't have a classroom full of kids. So in terms of the how-tos, delivering behavior-specific praise, it is very important, even if you're not pairing it with a reward. Or in the case of a token board, which we'll go into next, star or a token. So it is a form of positive attention. I know it's a lot easier to harp on the negative, but make sure you're also looking for the good stuff. I'm going to also let your student know what's expected, and you're also giving him or her credit for engaging in appropriate behavior. If you're using a token board and it's paired with that, chances are your student's going to make that connection. So here's a little classroom example. So Johnny is raising his hand, and the teacher says, "I love how you're raising your hand. What's up?" You know, so hand raising versus calling out. So chances are, if Johnny is reinforced for raising his hand specifically, he is more likely to do it in the future. So another example, and you know, this is a home-based example. So your child is brushing their teeth, and dad could say, "Great job remembering to brush your top teeth." So instead of just, "Oh, good job," you know, he's adding a specific element to it. So token economy, what is that? It's a system in which a student earns tokens for engaging in an appropriate behavior and can exchange them for a reinforcer or reward. So basically for that, you want to choose that behavior you want to see more of or want to reinforce. Select what your token is, stars, check marks, you know, whatever. So make a visual display. It could be as simple as boxes drawn on a sheet of paper, which I have had to do in my household in the moment, or sometimes I'm working with kids, or it could be something elaborate. I'll show a couple examples in a minute. Choose your reinforcers. Make sure they're meaningful to your child. If they're not meaningful to them, are they going to want to work for them? Probably not. You know your child best. And sometimes, depending on the kiddo, you can just ask them, "Hey, what do you want to work for when you're done with your science?" And deciding the number of tokens your child must earn before receiving the awards, or reward rather. Or you could also have a handful of reinforcers at your disposal and give your child an option to purchase. That's totally up to you. Um, there's a basic token board. I did talk about this a little bit in the independence and motivation. So if you watch that, this will look familiar. So a chosen reinforcer is placed in that big box on the top. And then there's little spaces for the stars to be given. You don't have to go up to 10. It just all depends on what's going on. So some keys to success for this is making sure that reward is something your child finds motivating. Using if then or first then language when stating those expectations. In the ABA world, it's called the Pramac principle, aka grandma's rule. So if you eat your vegetables, then you get dessert. Delivering that behavior specific praise. So I love how you're sitting in your seat. I really like how you asked me for help. Nice work getting that math done. Giving the token immediately after the desired behavior occurs, and then also being very consistent. So here's some examples. So up here on the top, you have your just hastily drawn 5 box. So sometimes you just got to grab a piece of scrap paper and do it. Whatever works. And there's your more run-of-the-mill standard one. And they can be elaborate. So say a kid really likes Legos. You could have their favorite character, and all the tokens that they earn are, maybe little Lego pieces or figurines. And another example is from our first grade class at JBA, which is pretty cool. It also has the expectations on top too. So it's kind of a dual purpose. So one thing, you want to make sure that those tokens have value. That's really important because on their own, they don't have any value. They're just a piece of paper or a button or an X or a check that you draw. So the reinforcer should be desired, first of all. Make sure you know what your child likes, or you can just ask. Don't assume. Don't ever assume. So for something to be considered a reinforcer, it must have a positive effect on future behavior. There are primary reinforcers and secondary. Primary reinforcers are always desired and needed for survival, like food and water. And then there are secondary reinforcers like tokens that have been conditioned. So tokens by themselves, like I said, don't really mean anything, but they can become reinforcing over time because they've been paired with those highly desirable and or primary reinforcers. And so we're just wrapping up, but I wanted to give you a few key things to know about reinforcers or rewards. It has to be something your student does not have open access to. So basically, you don't want your reward to be something that they can have at any time. So a couple of examples. If your child eats M&Ms for a snack every day, chances are they will not be as reinforcing as another enjoyable snack she doesn't eat often. So for example, Skittles. So, the thought that might be going through her mind is, well, I can get M&Ms every afternoon, so why should I work for them? You want to make sure that you deliver the reinforcer as quickly as possible. But if you take a long time to do that, that connection may be lost. Or you could accidentally reinforce a problematic behavior that may have occurred between that positive behavior and giving that token or that reinforcer. So just watch out for that. A couple more things. They should be delivered in a size that's worthwhile. Obviously, the more that's delivered at one time, the more of an effect it will have on behavior. So the key is to deliver just enough of the reinforcer for it to be effective, but not too much. Because if you do give too much, they'll become satiated. So basically, it will decrease its value because they're used to getting it so much. And then in terms of the size, would you give a handful of Skittles after each completed math problem, or maybe just 2 or 3? And so reinforcement must also be contingent upon a specific response. That is why you want to determine what behavior you're looking for that you want to reinforce. So you must be consistent and do not deliver that reinforcement for any other response. So thanks for watching. If you have any questions, comments, need some specifics, feel free to email me at any time, mlaco, Laco, at jbschool.org. And also, if there's anything you'd like to see more of, please let me know. Thanks so much.